Hello, hello, gente, Pulso Sports Network. We are here back with this show. I'm John Rojas, your host for this MLS Back in Action panel created by Nico Moreno and Pulso Sport Network in association with the Soccer Bar. We will touch Philadelphia Union, LAFC, Austin FC, FC Dallas, Sanders, Portland Timbers, and the newcomer, of course, St. Louis City, among others. Nico and Pulso Sports Network call and some of the most respected voices in MLS coverage answer. Unfortunately, we had two game time injuries. But let's bring in the good father of this project, the guy whose opinions are hotter and stronger than a commute in the morning this week in Seattle after the snowstorm. Let's bring in Nico Moreno, who's going to explain to us what's going on with this show. Nico.
Hey everyone, Familia de Pulso. Welcome to another one of our famous roundtables. If you've been following Pulso Sports, you know that we love to do this. We love to get around, talk to the analysts, the voices, the troops on the ground, those that are there following the teams and that of course are recognized voices nationally. And that's what we have today. Like John said, unfortunately today Max Bredos will not be with us, being one of the hardest working men in the nation and that MLS past talent. It's something that happens. John Arnold as well. He was another one we were really excited to talk to because of his FC Dallas connection. Now he's a broadcasting voice for FC Dallas. But have no fear. The talent is here. And we have the ability and the pleasure to have two fantastic not just journalists, but overall people. Starting off with my friend Arch Bell, someone who's as a Dallas Cowboys fan, I have to say that his personality is as great as Mr. Dak Prescott himself, and of course, someone who writes for ESPN. Is one of the main voices for CONCACAF in general, and we're just excited to have him on. Arch, thanks for being with us. How are you?
There we go. I'm no longer on mute. Guys, it's a pleasure to be with y'all today. I certainly appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to the visit.
I love it. That's what we have you here for. Obviously, someone who is so connected to us NFC. And after that tough first week, we're just excited to talk to you. And we have someone else here ready to go. And that is Jonathan Tunnerwall, that he has more followers than Philly cheesesteaks themselves. Someone who is, of course, an insider and a known voice around. I'm excited to have him because I've seen him around Lumen Field. I've talked to him a couple of times, but all that wisdom, all that knowledge is intimidating. So we haven't got a chance to talk, but now we have him here with us in Pulso Sports. Jonathan, how are you?
I'm great, Nico. Thanks for having me. Great to see John and Arch as well. And I'll give you a little knowledge right off the top here. The cheesesteak is not the best sandwich in Philadelphia. In fact, it's not even close. So next time you're ever over here, I'll make sure we treat you right.
Well, that's a hot take, my man, because I love some Philly cheesesteak. So I'm going to take you on that. If I'm in Philly, you got to show me what's better than a wonderful, delicious Philly cheesesteaks. Because I got to tell you, I make a bad ribeye Philly cheesesteak sandwich. So you're going to have to tell me.
It's a roast pork with broccoli rabe. I think Arch has been here once or twice. He might have had one in the past, but it's been a little while. I remember taking somebody we all know, Tom Marshall, formerly of ESPN, over to Reading Terminal Market, which is Philly's equivalent of Pike Place, to show him all the local delicacies, and we had a great time. So you guys, your time will come.
We used to be easier in the past, John, information and hot take that you're here for, people.
John, when you did NYCFC games, it was a little easier.
But, it was easier, a lot of easier, yeah. And remember, I don't know if you guys remember this, but I used to live in Princeton, so that put me halfway through either Philadelphia or New York City, whatever they wanted to go in a tent.
Did you eat at Hoagie Haven?
What's up?
Did you eat at Hoagie Haven?
Oh, yeah, I did. That was heaven. Totally. All right, guys.
You guys are making me hungry, John. So let's move it along.
I'm getting hungry. Let's get into this. And I'm getting hungry for soccer. What did we learn from this past week one of the 28 MLS season. Let's go around and reverse. So, Jonathan, what did we learn?
I think we learned. Look, I don't mean to be a homer because I'm not a Union fan, but I think we learned that the Philadelphia Union are pretty good, and they're still pretty good. And I just have to say, I think, we all read the athletic survey of all of the general managers and executives around the league. And one of them was brazen enough to say that the Union can't actually play good football and all they do is kick people. I would not have said that. I think, even if I believe it, and I know a lot of people around the league believe it, I would not have said that, because the last thing you want to do is motivate a team that's already that good to have people think that they're crap when they're not. If they were that bad, and I think about, a lot of teams over the years, probably the most famous one is the Colorado Rapids team that won MLS Cup under Gary Smith all those years ago. If the Union were that bad, if the football that they were playing was that ugly, why do they score so many goals?
You're on mute, John.
You see what happens? And not only that, John, but we have a full block of Philadelphia Union here because I think Philadelphia Union deserves to be talked about, right?
Mhm.
And that topic is like top of the list. I'm glad that you brought it in. We're going to keep touching on Philadelphia Union. Anything else that surprised you in general around the league?
Well, I think we have to tip our hats to St. Louis
Mm-hmm.
for winning their first game. You never know with an expansion team how they're going to do the first time on the field. And they not only won the game, they came from behind and spoiled the party for Arch's friends down there in Austin.
Right. Arch, what did we learn?
You know what? I was really disappointed with Toronto. I expected a lot more from Toronto FC. A lot of big name players, Mark Anthony Kay there in that midfield and everything, and the Italians and all that. So I was really surprised to see them kind of capitulate late against DC United and lose that game. And on the flip side for DC United, seeing how they reacted and how some of their young kids played pretty well. So, that was definitely one of the main takeaways from me from week one was Toronto FC was disappointing. And so I want to kind of see how that unfolds in the early weeks of this season.
Right. It's awesome. We did not have any kind of production meeting, and we go into the topics that we had listed to talk about and work on because they're really important around the MLS. And they actually made a mark on week first. So, Nico, what did we learn?
That's because we got top talent here, so it's just easy to just hop on and they just know what to do with the rock, baby. I love it. Well, just so I don't go with the homer take here, I'm going to say that I learned that Thiago Almada is still the best player under 22. He's such a fantastic talent. He's dynamic. He's electric. The way he literally gave Atlanta United that win was incredible. His ability to shoot in short space with such a potent way, and the ability to just put that free kick away with all of the pressure, because he knows he's the guy, he knows he's the man. He has all of this expectations for a young guy who's coming in from winning a World Cup. I mean, it is just fantastic. That's what I learned. Thiago Almada is the guy to watch at Atlanta United, and I absolutely love it.
And he basically saved Gonzalo Pineda's day, isn't it?
Oh yeah, he did, and he felt it. That you saw Gonzalo, you saw that pressure leave his body, and Gonzalo's a guy that he tries to keep that poker face on constantly. He's all about end results and is not a game by game guy, but he felt it. He felt it.
Yeah, totally. All right, I'm going to close this topic, and I'm going to just list out a little bit of things that I learned and co-meditation on week one. Austin need some kind of depth in the back line. I think losing the center back was too much of a deal for them, and they pay for it. Second, Portland Timbers have a little bit of an issue with Jimmy Chara's hamstring. It's too often, it's too many on a season that he suffers those issues, and they need to take care of that. They need to deal with that. Um, San Luis, for me, it's great that they won it. It was historic. I don't know if you guys knew. No team that was debuting, no new franchise in MLS, newcomers, won their first game coming back from losing during the game since 1996. So it's basically since the first week of MLS, no new team won their first game, right? Coming back on the scoreline, and that is important for them. But for me, that should not raise expectations on San Luis. They're still the newcomer, and they will pay for that. And the other one, I think, is going to take us to the next topic, and this is going to be, of course, Jonathan's bread and butter. Is this Philadelphia Union's year?
No.
Why not?
For one
Okay.
reason. For one reason.
Interesting.
Okay.
For one reason.
Mhm.
And again, I'm not from here, but anytime you ask somebody who lives in Philadelphia, is this a Philadelphia sports team's year to win a championship? They are automatically going to tell you no.
Okay. Now you play the
Well,
game.
no, look, I think that they are undoubtedly the best team in the Eastern Conference. I think they are favorites to win the Supporters' Shield. If they can add the Open Cup to the Supporters' Shield, then they'll have had a really great year. Obviously, if they can win it all, it'll be great. But I don't predict the playoffs. I just don't predict one game crapshoots, you know?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I don't, as I wrote in my season preview, conversation with one of my colleagues up here, I said, I don't predict the playoffs, and I even more don't predict the playoffs when I don't know the playoff format until 3 days before the season starts.
Fair point.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yep.
So look, they're really good. They have a system. They have an identity. They have consistency. They brought everybody back. And how often have we said so many times over the years in MLS that consistency is so important in the league because there's so little of it. So if you can achieve it and you have a system and you have a strategy and it enables you to buy players who fit a system, instead of just buying 22 players and having them play jazz music, you really, when you have a team that starts from a system and buys players that fit it and succeeds that way, that's the recipe for success in this league.
So
as
let me rephrase that,
Yeah.
Jonathan. I mean, without just your opinion, is there a pressure of like, is MLS or bust for this team overall? I mean, when is it? When is that time where they've been so close, they've been right there, they've added players, they got more depth than last year in certain places. There is no pressure of, is MLS or bust?
Well, I think there's an amount of pressure of trophy or bust on this team.
Yeah.
Because if they don't, the rest of the league is going to laugh at them and say, haha, we told you so.
Mm-hmm.
But
Agree.
I'll give you this example. There's not a lot of pressure locally. And it goes to an experience that I had, Nico. You might remember one of the last Sounders games that I was at was the Tigres Leagues Cup game a couple years ago. And I'd come out there and the Union it was 2021. I remember this because the Union were venturing in the Champions League for the first time in their history. And I really wanted to ask Brian Schmetzer what advice he'd give Jim Curtin about being in the Champions League. And, what it means, especially for if you're a team that has some young players like the Union have, who have some U.S. youth national team experience, who are going to, we all believe, play for the senior youth national team in the years to come. It was, Paxton Aronson at the time. It's Jack McGlynn now, and Brandon Craig and Nate Harriel. And I really wanted to ask Brian Schmetzer about this, but the Sounders were in the midst of a 3-game losing streak, and that was all anybody wanted to talk about. And I felt kind of weird, and I could barely raise the question. That's pressure in the market. The Union don't have that. New York City FC doesn't have that.
Yeah.
Austin's too new to have it.
Right. That's true.
So the pressure here is if you don't win a trophy, nobody's going to pay attention to you. It's not nobody's going to be angry with you.
Mm-hmm.
The Union, unfortunately,
but the fans in Philly, Jonathan, but the fans go by the results, right? Philly is one of those cities that you're going to see the stadium.
Yes.
I mean, the people is going to fill in the stadium if the team keeps fighting for the top spots, if they're still going deep into the playoffs, fighting for that trophy. But if they're not, fans are going to be retracting, and you're not going to see the stadium with those fans in.
Well, I think that's the form of pressure that we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they are favorites to win the Shield because the East is relatively weak and the schedule is so unbalanced that if you can rack up enough points against the Eastern Conference, you're probably going to win the Shield because Seattle, Austin, LAFC, etc., are going to eat each other up enough.
Yeah, it's too loaded
Right.
in the West.
So, Arch, what are we going to do with this? Expectations and LAFC, Philadelphia, NYCFC are supposed to be on top of the preferences to win the cup, and we see, like Jonathan says, that.
Well, and I got one after Arch goes.
Okay, Philadelphia won it, but it's different to have that pressure.
Yeah, I think Philly. I mean, all signs point towards Philly taking the Eastern Conference. I would be surprised if they didn't. I think Cincinnati is a candidate, the way they've shored up their defense this year, and they've got a really good attack. Of course, New York City FC, you always think, well, this is the year they're going to fall off. Maximo Morales went back to Racing in Argentina, but they just got James Sands back, so I think they'll be solid as well. But yeah, it's got to be Philly this year. The CONCACAF Champions League, it always kind of throws in a wrench sometimes for some of these teams, especially if you make a deep run in CONCACAF. We've seen where that has plagued teams in MLS before. Last year with Seattle, in 2018 with Toronto FC, when they made the final and they ended up not making the playoffs that year in MLS. So, but I just think Philly has too much talent, too much depth. So yeah, the expectations are there for, I think, around the league and for fans around the league that Philly, takes the Eastern Conference. In the West, yeah, of course, LAFC, the expectations are high as well. But yeah, I think it would be unwise to discard Seattle or Austin or Dallas, teams like that, who and I think Seattle in particular, I think they're going to have a really good year this year, a bounce back year. And I think Austin will right their ship even despite this week 1 loss. But I think if you were to poll fans around the league and say, okay, which team do you anticipate finishing first in their conference? I think the majority of the people would say Philly.
If Seattle's going to play with the anger and the chip in the shoulder that they showed on Sunday night, not that we're ever accustomed to the Sounders or their fans carrying a chip on their shoulder. We're used to them carrying themselves as the favorites. But if they're going to play with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder this year, because they know how last year went and they know that it did not go well, I would look out for them.
Yeah.
Because with that talent, light a little fire under them. That's the last thing you want to see.
Yeah.
Philly went out. They signed Joaquin Torres from Montreal, Damian Lowe from Miami, and Andres Pereira from Orlando. They signed 3 players who are starting caliber players elsewhere in the league. And everybody said, well, they're not going to start here. I said, yes, they are, because the Union are going to play 60 games this year.
Yeah, a lot of games.
Right.
So everybody's going to play, and they need that much depth. And it is part of why everybody likes them. And then you have you have the academy as sort of the cheat code with the bottom of the depth with, Brandon Craig, who's a very promising center back, Nelson Pierre at striker, and a couple of other guys. But I want, John, can you put that graphic up with the percentage odds? Okay.
There.
What is New York City FC doing that high up?
Exactly.
I don't see it.
That's not even
see it.
Really good point. No, because it's
That
not even
surprised
a
me
team.
too.
It's not even
That
a
surprised
team
me
right
too.
now. New York City FC is still in the building blocks. You're going to see 6 or 7 players before the end of the window, before closing the transfer window. So in 2 months, it's going to be a totally different team, a brand new team. So how do you do this without even knowing the team?
Yeah.
and that's fine. You know, maybe they're going to go out and sign some people who we don't know about yet. James Sands is a good player. I wouldn't call him a great player. But who's going to put the ball in the net?
Yeah, Abra's
Bias
gone.
Magno and who else?
Yeah, and we're still trying to figure out what Tallis is. I really don't think he's a 9. I don't think he has the qualities to play with the goal to back. I still think that the generation of in that final third is still to come. I think Santiago Rodriguez, once he gets there, he's going to be a guy that's going to be able to create a lot of volume for this team. And he is someone that can link up play in the final third. He's someone that could also score. He's a great finisher. But it all comes down to what you guys were talking about Seattle, right? Seattle was different than any other team because they were betting on continuity. They were playing in a group that has an identity built that they can play basically off of almost instinct. I believe the New York City and the New York City group are so pretentious that they believe that they can just bring a bunch of players because of their databases and the money and the group, and they're just going to be able to take the league by storm. And I feel like they're going to get a big reality check in 2023. Boom, I said.
Here's the thing, Nico. They're right. They're
Exactly.
right. They can,
They're being proven right.
They've got right, but they don't have a striker. They don't have a finisher. They've got some really, they've got Magno, they've got Thiago Andrade, they've got Gabby Pereira is an unbelievable player. He's really good. And they snatched Matthias Pellegrini from Miami. That's a lot of talent. But who brings it together? I don't see that player there right now.
I think they're going to really
I
miss
think it'll be
Morales.
Santi.
I think they're going to miss Morales as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the whole plan is the Santi is going to slide down in that role. But of course, Santi doesn't have the experience, right, to not only to read the game and to manage his body that Maxi had. And that's important for that group.
Right.
I will say, you're talking about a chip on your shoulder. Santi's going to come in with a chip on his shoulder because of everything that happened, the negotiations, how he was set aside, he was sent to Torquay. Everything about his transactions has been awful. That's the reason why he's not with the team. It's taking so long to get everything squared away. So I believe that he's going to come in with a lot of motivation and trying to prove that he's a talent that should be taken care of a little bit better than he has.
Well, that's all well and good until you run headfirst into Walker Zimmerman or Jose Andres Martinez or whoever it may be.
And I think New York City's real problem is going to be defensively. I mean, Alexander Callens was a wrecking force back there.
And
he was a leader. He was somebody that brought the ball out of the back, that wasn't afraid to pull a little bit forward and break lines with the ball. I just don't know if they have or they will have a guy like that.
If I was an MLS GM, I mean, if I needed a goalkeeper, Sean Johnson would have been at the top of my list in the offseason. But other than that, if I needed a center back, I would have gone after Alex Callens. And everybody needs a center back, which means everybody should have gone after Alex Callens.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I think the gamble, because you can call it that way, that NYCFC play with Sean Johnson, I think it's a fair one. Because Luis Barraza is a really good keeper, is really good with the ball on his feet, and that's something that is important for the system. And I think that guy is going to prove that is his moment. His age is there to keep growing on the game and to keep being an important piece of that progress. And in that sense, maybe you can see it, right? We have this guy, and we can just not pay Sean Johnson what maybe he deserves, but it's too much for that position right now, having this kid. On the other hand, you don't have the same thing with Alex Callens, right? The kind of depth that you have replacing Callens is not the same that you have right now with Barraza replacing Johnson.
I mean, think about that spine, how much that spine is different. No Callens, no Johnson, no Morales. That means a lot.
No
right?
Tati.
So I think
that's right.
Tati, of course, right.
Well, and it begs to me this question, John. If I'm New York City and I need a little of the intangibles, not just the tangibles, do I play Matt Freese?
Huh?
They probably will. They probably will. The thing is, No. And he's there to win that position. It's not. I mean, Barraza being the number one on week one doesn't mean that is Barraza's
Right.
place to lose. But what it really means is that when they play Barraza, they're gonna play one way. When they play Freeze, they're gonna
Yes.
play a different way. That's what it means.
Sure.
I bet you my friend Arch Bell knows a team that would have loved to have an Alex Kajin type.
Well, yeah. Well,
Oh
absolutely.
yeah, totally. Let's jump
That's
into
Absolutely.
let's jump into that one because those are two other favorites there, right?
Yeah,
Austin and
yeah.
LAFC at the other side, they're supposed to be favorites there, but we already know that LAFC is not under construction, but they tweaking elements already.
Sure.
Uh, they lost Chichorango, which it was like
Yeah.
a blank check on the field. Now you don't even know who's gonna bring those goals. And then you go to Austin, and like we said before, the back line needs depth because uh, it's too many inexperienced players to fill in the roles when you need them.
Yeah.
Arch,
And
how do you see
that
them, and how do
is
people see it there in Austin?
yeah, I mean that is among the Austin FC fans, and it was one of those things that was talked about prior to the season, the center back, and for me, it was really the biggest question coming into the 2023 season was, okay, how's center back going to work out? Because Ruben Gabrielsen went back to Norway, so they bring in Leo Väisänen. I hope I'm saying that right. The Finnish center back to pair with Julio Cascante, who I think has played very well. He's done well. He's improved under Josh Wolf here in Austin. And what was it, like 13 minutes in or whatever it was the other night where Cascante goes down. The club
almost
reported
17.
yesterday. Yeah, it was going to be 8 weeks that he's going to be on the shelf at least.
Minimum, exactly. He's going to be reevaluated.
Minimum.
You know what's happening here? Basically, what they're telling you is we're going to treat this injury. We don't want to go to the surgery. We're going to treat him and reevaluate. We
So it's
believe that
you're probably looking more like 3 months.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're probably looking at it longer. So, over the course of the winter, I think one thing that's going to really stick in Josh Wolf's craw is the fact that Johan Romagna showed up for preseason pretty much out of shape. Wolf alluded to that even during one of his preseason pressers with the media, and subsequently they decided to loan him out. So there's another one of your experienced center backs who was shipped off on loan to Olympia. So
right.
it was thin. So you have Gabrielsen going back to Norway, Romagna loaned out. They bring in Tarek, which is good, and he knows Josh, but it was really like it's going to be tested about who could possibly fill in the void for now. Is it going to be Tarek? Are they going to rush him in there, or is it going to be like an Alex Ring who has played center back before in this league and even for Austin FC? But yeah, it's a problem.
But then Arch, with Romagna, I don't think it was only a matter of his shape coming out of off season or coming into preseason.
True. I mean, he was out of favor as well.
But yeah, he didn't play that much last year.
Yeah,
neither.
He was out of
right.
favor. Yeah.
So it was like, okay, he gave us the excuse now. We were trying, but he's not putting his 2 cents.
Yeah, and I think that's true. He didn't play that much last year. I mean, Gabrielsen and Cascante. I'll say this about Austin FC: they led a charmed life last year. Like hardly any injuries at all. Nothing. I mean, Driussi, everybody was pretty much healthy the entire season, and then bang, here you go, the first minutes of the first season, and you get a major injury like this. Yeah. I think the attack is going to be fine. With Driussi, as long as Driussi stays healthy, they need Rigoni to find himself. I think Zardes, once that will come with time. Ruti's a great backup option at the number 9. Diego Fagundes, you've got consistency there. Danny Pereira continues to get better in midfield. I'm excited to see what Owen Wolf does this year in midfield as well. But yeah, that center back is something that we'll all have to watch. Now, I will say this: in his press meeting today with media, Josh did make the comment that they are looking potentially at bringing somebody in, either internationally from overseas or somebody from within MLS. So I think I would not be surprised if you see a move to be made to bring in another center back, and I think they need to. Now, who's going to start against Montreal in week 2 is interesting. And this is like Philadelphia. Jonathan made the comment about like the Union having to play so many games this year. Same situation with Austin FC, with CONCACAF. You would suppose that they would get through this first series against Violette of Haiti, so they would be at least playing 4 games in the CONCACAF Champions League. So an already thin center back line is going to be severely tested in 4 competitions this year. So yes, they need some help, and they need it pretty quickly.
Now, Arch, I heard you say Josh won't talk to the press. That was news in and of itself.
He's not bad. He's good. He talks to us. He'll give us a little something here and there. He's not bad.
Is he saying there are doubters again?
Run? Yeah.
What's that?
Oh, no.
Or is he going about saying there are doubters again, or whatever it was last?
No, nothing like that. I think there's been like this reaction to what happened with Kip Keller the other night. People really not liking what Jared Stroud, calling Kip's name. And Josh even kind of alluded to that a little bit in his presser today, saying, he wasn't really a big fan of what Jared Stroud did. But I mean, that these things are going to happen in the sport. So whatever.
But is that
the most concerning was with what happened with Kip and his performance, and right. His confidence is shaken. And now, and he didn't play. I mean, in the time that he played last season, especially at the very beginning of the season, Kip Keller was actually okay. So I guess
he didn't play much.
He played a little bit at the start of the season, but then after that, he didn't play a lot.
He played 300 minutes. That's what he
played. Games, I think he started like the first 2 or 3 games, something like that, while Gabrielson got up to speed. But mentally,
he played in total. He played in total in 6 games overall in the season, right?
But mentally, I don't think he
3. I think
play the other night. I just don't
think
like
he was 300 minutes, 300 and something minutes. That's not enough to come into that pressure moment. And if you check his performance on week 1, it's showing that he doesn't have experience. The first goal is on him.
Yep.
He is the guy on the mark.
It's shared. It's shared.
He's the guy on the mark. He loses the mark. Goal. Second goal. He is the one who is behind the line, right? And not creating the offside for that play that ended up in the goal. So he is not concentrated on his line. And then the third one. So it's just we don't need to kill the guy, right? He's a young guy. He's just coming in. But at the same time, in the overall picture of the team, they need more. They need more, and the guy needs to be surrounded not by pressure, but with good experience in order to get to a better level and a performance that he feels comfortable with.
Yeah,
I feel bad.
I think Wolf is Wolf is the type of coach who really prides himself on developing players, and he's done a very good job. Cascante improved, Danny Pereira's improved. Like all these guys who have come into the team, they have improved, and so I think it's really when he sees a performance like that where Kip Keller to make those kinds of mistakes. I'm sure it was incredibly frustrating for him, but you can kind of see how it happened. As you said, like he didn't play a lot last year. Most of his minutes came at the start of the season. And, probably he was thinking he wasn't going to see the field at all the other night. And then bang, next thing you know, you're in. And mentally, was he ready? Probably not.
I feel bad for the kid. Yeah, I feel bad for the kid.
Yeah.
But in terms of, team dynamics and whatnot, it sounds to me like this back line is in just need of going out to play a flag football game on Thanksgiving afternoon because it's the oldest trick in the book.
I can tell you that Seattle has a starter center back on the bench that they're fielding calls for. So, you never know.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah,
so
if I was Seattle, I don't think I'd sell to Austin specifically, but it's tempting.
Nope.
If they really want to put the money on the table,
it'd have to be the right price, definitely.
Yeah, but not in your conference, not at this moment.
No,
Jonathan, this question has no fundamentals. LAFC and Austin against the rest. It has
Of
no
the West
reason
or
to be there.
against the rest of
The
the Western
West.
Conference?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I'd exclude Seattle from that group.
Same here.
I think there's probably a drop off after that to the next class of teams. And I'd like to think that Kansas City is in that next class of teams if they all stay healthy.
Okay.
But as we know, that's a big if.
Mhm.
And then who else is going to be in that tier? I think it's tough to tell right now because there's a lot of teams that have talent. I'd like to think that Dallas is going to be in that tier too because they've got the talent. It's unknown to me how it all washes out at this point.
Yeah, that's the team I'm thinking about, right? I mean, look, I'm a Sounders guy. I'm here in the day to day. I had them at third in my season rankings because I thought Dallas was going to be one of the dominant teams this season. I mean, you look at that roster, you look at the continuity. They go out there and they bring in a piece like Jimenez that can help you either change your formation or be a depth piece, and he's a very talented striker. You see all of the ability that Alan Velasco has, and Ariola and Ferreira, and man, you just got a whole bunch of studs up top. So I really thought that Dallas was going to be the team, and I still do. I mean, it was just one game. But I really do feel like Dallas is one of those teams that is going to be at the top of the West.
What do we do with Dallas, Arsh?
Wow, that was very surprising against Minnesota the other night. They fell flat, didn't convert any of their chances. But I'm with Nico on this. I think there's too much up top for Dallas for them to fall down too far. I think they're definitely top 4 in the West. I see them up there with Seattle, Austin, and LAFC. So I think Dallas, kind of similar to Austin, they will right the ship after a little stumble here in week 1. It's so easy to have these knee-jerk reactions after one game. We do it in all sports. It happens in the NFL, even Major League Baseball, but especially as well in MLS. But I think Dallas have the pieces in place to have a very good top 4 Western Conference season, and I think they will.
What I don't know, what I doubt or what I think, what get me stuck with Dallas is that for a couple of years now, we always heard, now we going for titles, right? We know we're good developing players. We know we're good with the academy. So now we bring in players, or we bring in the right coaching staff to get to that next step and fight for titles, right? And that was the main reason that Oscar Pareja came back to Dallas. And then that was the main reason that Oscar Pareja had 2 or 3 players when he wanted to get them international players. And then now when Nico came in, that was the main reason. Now we are going to get titles.
They signed Velasco,
and now
they
you
get
see
Ariola.
And now you see exactly. Now you see the roster, and now that's a roster to get titles.
Sure.
So now what? Is now or never?
This is a huge year for Nico Estevez. I mean, he needs to have some really good results here in the first 2 to 3 months of this season. Because if the team doesn't respond, then there's definitely, he'll be on the hot seat, because it would be, for Dallas not to be a legitimate contender, top 4 team in the conference, I think would be a huge disappointment.
The irony of Nico Estevez being on the hot seat right now, only just over a year into his tenure, is that I would have loved him to be in Anthony Hudson's chair right now. No offense to Anthony Hudson. I just thought that Estevez would have made a really good interim U.S. manager if the timing had been right, but the timing was not right because he had just taken the Dallas job. So if he ends up out, I wonder if he returns to U.S. soccer in some form after that.
Very possible.
Nico,
do you think that can happen, Jonathan? Do you think that can happen? Because I totally agree with you. It will be better for the program, right? It will be better for Nico. But if at the club level he doesn't find what he is looking for, is there a chance for him to return
I mean,
to the national team?
I'm not gonna wish ill on him.
Right.
I'm not gonna wish against his success.
Mm-hmm.
And then it comes down to who the sporting director is and who the manager is and all this other stuff that we're all waiting endlessly for.
We're gonna wait a while, I think.
I fear that we are going to wait a while
What was
too.
longer, the postseason, the playoffs format, or the national team?
Sure. Well, the running joke, and I know this is normally a men's soccer show. The running joke was which would get announced first, the MLS playoff format or the site of the NWSL championship game, which always comes in very late.
Yeah.
And everybody wants to go, and they can't book their tickets in hotels and so on. No, I mean, I think how long it's taking with U.S. soccer is, I think they have time because they have to get through the Nations League Final Four. The Gold Cup, as far as I'm concerned, and I think I'm not the only person who thinks this, the Gold Cup they ought to send the Olympic team to. Why not? You need those under 23 guys to have a little bit of experience time playing together before the Olympics next summer. No, who cares?
Yeah.
Fox cares. Nobody else, I don't think, cares all that much. And Fox might not even care all that much because they can market it as guys who are going to play in 2026. So let the Gold Cup team be the Olympic squad mostly. Nobody cares about that. Let the Nations League squad be some of the bigger guys, I think they're going to have to call in Gio Reyna and a few of the other big guns in March and then go try to win the Final Four. And if they do that, then they're in the clear until September when hopefully the new manager gets in there and starts building toward the Copa America. So, but I'm more concerned not by the amount of time that this is all going to take, but by the fact that we don't really know. And I realize this is taking it further off topic than we intended to, but I'm sure Arch has heard some of this stuff too. And you guys, all the rest of you guys have also in various parts of the country. It's just the lack of knowing what that consulting firm Sportsology is doing.
It's very frustrating.
Who are they really after? What kinds of people are they going after? Look, we're all in the press. We like to talk to people. We're a little spoiled in that regard. I get it. But it would be nice if we'd hear a little more about what kinds of people they want, because all we know so far is two people who they went to who said no for legitimate reasons, I think. But that's all that's out there right now.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the other part of that is that this is not a moment to start a brand new process, right? You have a pool of rosters that are in need of results because they are on the top of the competition, on the top of the game, most of them, right? On getting their prime in age. So they need results with their national team. It's not like, okay, let's start a whole process and we can, do it and focus on 2 World Cups down the road. No, you have the World Cup coming home. You have those guys that need to be winning something before that, and you have
and they need a strong Copa America in 24. I think that's really important.
That's going to be, and as soon as they announced that, and I think all 4 of us knew well before it announced that it was in the works because everybody had been talking about it for a while.
Yeah.
But as soon as it got announced, I said, okay, that resets the orientation of what the program is aiming for. Because, everybody said, oh my God, they have to get all this done as soon as possible. Once they announced the Copa America, I said, no, they have to have it done in time to be ready for the Copa America. And that, I think, gave them a little more time to work with. But to this point and bringing it back, we've been talking about the Philadelphia Union this whole time. Another of the dynamics that they face is Jim Curtin going to get the national team job?
Yeah.
I don't expect it. I'm not going to say I don't think so. He's obviously a candidate.
Yes.
That is clear.
I don't anticipate, I wouldn't, I don't know. I think U.S. Soccer knows that they have to make a big splash with 26 home soil. They need I think they kind of know they need a big name.
I'm fairly certain from a lot of people who I've talked to over the last few months that one of the reasons why they were trying to string this out a little bit is that they were trying to get to the summer and see who would come on the market.
Mm-hmm.
But once Ernie Stewart left, and now they have to do all this other building, it begs the question of, is it going to end up getting drawn out too far to cost them who they want? How long is Anthony Hudson going to have the job for? What is the definition of interim going to be until this winter, until next spring, until what? Because, for example, somebody said, well, what if Jim Curtin was the interim guy to hold them until March or April of 24 or whatever? And my response to that was, there are some guys out there, and Nico Estevez is one of them, who I think would be ideal for that sort of thing. But Jim Curtin's too good for that, I think. He's done too much as a manager. If you're going to hire him to the job, hire him to the job.
Right, full time. Yep.
Not as a 2-year interim. There are, as I said, there are other guys out there who I think we'd all be perfectly fine with as an interim. But Jim Curtin, I think, has done enough at this point in his career to deserve better than
that. I think he fits in the best, and I'm with you. It's not the time to blow it up and completely forget everything that went well during Greg Berhalter's time and completely change the dynamic and bring in a name just to bring in a name. There is just not enough time. Like you guys said, there's a dress rehearsal that's coming up immediately with Copa America. You have to build this group, the identity. And look, sometimes the talent level can be really restrained and handicapped by who the manager is. And it could be dreadful for a soccer nation. It happened to Colombia, where there was a whole bunch of issues and problems, and they brought in a guy like Queiroz, and then he didn't fit the group, and then they had to go and do other changes and brought in Reda. And what did it result in? Colombia not making the World Cup. So I just think that you need to be careful when you have a golden generation, because golden generations don't last forever, and they need to win now. You need someone that's going to come in, build on what's working, and get results.
And I don't think we'll have a manager come in from MLS to coach the national team. I would be surprised if one of these 29 bosses in MLS ends up being that takes the reins of the national team. That would surprise me a lot.
All four of us are old grouches who've been around the block in American soccer for a while. And we all thought way back in the day that Bruce Arena wasn't going to have a doghouse, and that Bob Bradley wasn't going to have a doghouse, and that Jurgen Klinsmann wasn't going to have a doghouse, and that Greg Berhalter wasn't going to have a doghouse. Well, they all had doghouses. So at a certain point, you have to give up and realize that a manager's going to have a doghouse. And you got to hope that it's as small as possible and there's as few people in it as possible. But I just sort of, after a while, I put my hands up and said, I can't do anything about this anymore.
It doesn't happen until it does.
I'll tell you what, though, Nico, something I thought of while you were talking about that. If Garth Lagerwey had not just taken a big-time new job, if he was still in Seattle and had been there for a while, I wonder if he would have been fairly toward the front of the line for sporting director.
I would have to think so.
The answer is yes.
I would have to think so.
Yeah,
and I think he'd be great. I think he'd be really good.
Yes, I do. And I was thinking about this earlier, and it's what I'm about to say, some people might take some offense to. I don't mean it that way. If you're going to be the sporting director of U.S. soccer, you have to care about men's soccer and women's soccer. That is not for everybody. And if you're not interested in women's soccer, or you just don't know a lot about it, and you know at the start that you don't know a lot about it, and so you don't want to have to take over all these things that you really don't know much about. I'm not going to criticize somebody who Sportsology calls them up and says, I'm really not interested in this. And that's one of the things that I think we have to get out of U.S. soccer. And it's one of the issues with them not being as open as we'd like them to be, where I think one of the things we have to ask them is it a perfectly legitimate reason that the fact that you're overseeing the men's and women's program might limit the candidate pool a little bit here? Because if you come in and only care about the men's national team, you can't do that.
Right.
With this federation.
No.
You can't do it with any federation, but you especially can't do it with this federation.
No, because just put it simple. Jonathan. How come you're gonna come into the post and turn your back to the most successful part of the program?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Makes no sense. Whatever you want the program to be.
Yeah. And I think Garth Lagerwey, look, I'm not saying that he's dealt in women's soccer a ton in his life, but he would care enough about it if he was going to take that job. And as I said, if anybody out here is listening to me and saying that Garth Lagerwey is going to get the job, no, that's not what I'm saying. I don't think he's going to get the job. But that's the kind of person who I think would understand that aspect of the job as well.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And just to conclude and get back to the MLS, because I love where we're going, but I know you guys have to go. But yes, Jonathan, you're absolutely right, because one of the virtues that Garth Lagerwey, someone who I followed as long as I did, is that he's not afraid to just analyze a situation and bring in the right people to help him do a couple of things, because he does care, because he understands the structure of what the infrastructure of success of whatever team he's building. So because of that, I totally agree. That's why he's brilliant. But after this job in Atlanta, he's going to be there for a while.
Yes.
And well deserved. He's going to be there for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
I would say so. Atlanta would be foolish to let him go, you know. And he always, Garth, I think what makes Garth so good is kind of what you were saying, Nico. He surrounds himself with really good people. You know, he brought in Robbie Ramanemi, you know, to do analytics. I mean, things like little moves like that. Very smart, and I think he's just so well respected and well liked as well.
Yes.
Yep. All right, boys, we sidetracked for a good reason. That was a really good topic that we needed to touch on at some point.
Sorry.
Yeah, no. And it's great, Jonathan, because either way it's tied up one with the other. So
100%.
it's fine. So two last topics before we leave. The newcomer, San Luis City. That was a fluke game, or should we have big expectations after we saw on week 1 from them?
Both, I think.
Oh,
go ahead, Jonathan.
Okay.
I think maybe that one game was a little bit of a fluke. I don't know if we should have big expectations for this year, but I think that in the not just the long term, but the medium term, we should have big expectations for this team, because that is an exceptional soccer city in America. That is one of the truly great, for a century plus,
and in the long
cities
term, I
in this
agree
country.
for those reasons. Yes, they need to.
Arch, were you at the game?
No, it was not at the game. I wasn't able to go to the game, but certainly watched it from start to finish. And you know what? It struck me. There were a lot of similarities with what I saw sometimes in from Austin FC in year 1. I remember Austin FC's very first game is when they went out to LAFC. They lost 2-0, but you know, there were times where you saw like some good passages of play, like playing out of the back and things like that, where they were good. And St. Louis, what got my attention was how they really frustrated Austin FC's attack. And a lot of times Austin just went long ball, and they don't really do that. That's not their style. And so I was impressed by St. Louis. I think what John said at the very beginning of the broadcast, which I think is true, is like, you know, it's a new franchise. There's going to be a lot of ups and downs. They will have their struggles for sure. Will they make the playoffs? I don't know. But I was impressed with the spirit that they showed in their first game. To get a win at Q2 Stadium was impressive. Yes, they took advantage of some very big, egregious mistakes from the Austin FC defense. But mistakes aside, they did frustrate Austin FC going forward. They really did, especially in that first half. So I see it as a team that they'll get a result here and there. They'll get a nice win here and there during the season. Probably not make the playoffs, but it's almost like you can kind of see a foundation being laid for seasons 2, 3, and 4 in the years to come for that franchise. So I'll say, like, I was impressed with what I saw, and I think they'll have some good moments this year. But I mean, so those are my expectations for St. Louis.
Yeah, go ahead, Nico. I wasn't impressed, but I want to close out this topic. So go ahead, Nico.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with John. I think that, yes, there were aspects of what St. Louis did, especially offensively, that I thought were very interesting. When I looked at this roster in general and thought how maybe the coach would explode some of that limited talent there in so many positions, was going to be very direct, which it was. But then they had a lot of triangulations and combinations in midfield to open up lanes, and I thought that was very clever the way they did it. It wasn't profound. It wasn't like a possession-based team, but when they got direct, they knew when to change the pace, combine, and allow certain lanes to be open in the final third. And I thought that was interesting. That said, I think that the game was extremely circumstantial. I think that obviously they took advantage of a lot of mistakes.
Yep.
But I still believe that this roster, as it sits today, just doesn't have the depth and the talent to be even a meat team in the West. That's why I have them at the bottom of it. But we'll see. They definitely showed that they can win some games, that they can frustrate teams. And now with the Charlotte squad that wasn't amazing in their in their opener, I'm wondering how they'll do in Charlotte. Oh no, in St. Louis.
In St. Louis, yeah. I'm going to make it quick because I agree with a lot of the points that you guys made. I think this is for the future. It's a city that deserves a really good team down the road. A team that can play good football, good soccer, and have that stadium feel every single that they play. But I think that is something for down the road.
Yeah.
Right now, what I see from them is just hard workers of the game. I think a roster and a team that is not fun to watch. You're not going to be running home to watch their games, but they're probably going to make some points. You know,
Yes.
They're going to.
Yeah, I think that's
points.
an apt description right there.
Yeah, and it's important for them at the end of the day, right? It's their first year, and
Okay.
we probably are spoiled the last couple of years with LAFC, with Atlanta United, with Austin at some point. That the first year is really good in terms of rosters and results, but those were very specific moments on the history of the league. If we review the whole league, the newcomer has to pay for it, period. At some point, year 1.5, or 2, but they will pay for it.
Yep.
It's different. The last couple of years, I think we had a lot of spoil coming out of, especially from Atlanta and LAFC.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and the last one, and this is just because Nico put all this together, so we had to go to him. Saunders and Timbers. Do they have a lot to prove? I mean, definitely Timbers have, because they did not make the postseason, because Gio is there, because it's a process, because they kept a lot of the players of the base that they have in their core of the roster is there. But Saunders, I'm not sure if they had to prove anything. Go ahead, Nico. Arch, and then Jonathan.
No, they definitely
before we leave.
did. I mean, we talked about it a little bit when we started the show, and it's a team that's used to playing for championships. And last season, that wasn't necessarily the case. Yes, they got the biggest objective. They got the Moby Dick of the organization, which was that CONCACAF Champions League title. And you got the opportunity to go to a Club World Cup. Yes, that's fantastic. That's great. But this organization wanted more. And they are playing this season with a chip on his shoulder. Every objective, Leagues Cup, Open Cup, MLS, they want to win absolutely everything. And you see it with how they were focused on retaining players and not adding. And where they added, they needed depth, right? Will Bruin is going to Austin FC. They bring in a guy like Eber on a very good deal in terms of GAM and TAM. He's a guy that's proven that already in game one, felt like he's been playing with this team forever. His link-up play, his notion for goal, just the way he locates where the ball's going to be. You guys are all overall sports fans. I remember that people remember Dennis Roman being such a good rebounder because you could feel like he knew where the ball was going to go. I swear that Eber just knows where the ball is going to end. Depending on where the cross is coming from, depending on where the shot is coming from on the rebound. So I really think that was a good position for them to get. I think that there are holes and there are things that they need to do in terms of like left back and right back. I think they're a little short there. The wing play is a little bit short. But the reality of this squad is that as long as they stay healthy, JP is in there. Nicolas Odero in his last year of his contract, wanting to just come out up top and just defining an extraordinary career in MLS that I would argue is the most successful signing in the history of MLS because of everything he did for this franchise, plus a Raul Ruiz that once healthy, he's going to be just a wrecking ball up top. I do believe that this team is going to be on top of the West and they're going to want to win. But to your question, John, yes, they do have something to prove. They have to prove that they're the king of Cascade still. They have to prove that they are a contender for MLS Cup, and you start in the regular season.
I love this.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Nico. I think Seattle have a lot to prove. I think they're hungry, they're motivated. I think João Paulo coming back from injury is just massive for them. I mean, I think they really, really missed him. Remember, he got hurt in that Pumas second leg, and that was May 1st. So that was like way, way early in the season. They missed him a lot. And the fact that he's back, the Abear edition is great. I think Seattle are really set to have an excellent season. I think they will win Cascadia. I think Portland will be good, and I think Portland will make the postseason. But for my money, when Seattle gets into that postseason, it's just don't bet against them. I always consider them, if they are in the MLS playoffs, they are a contender to reach MLS Cup. So yeah, Seattle for my money is going to be one to watch.
Yeah, Jonathan, remember when it was a thing with Seattle, starting very, very slow and then catching up at the end of the season?
I love this conversation so much because I get to be the contrarian this time.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I like it.
Yes, there's pressure on Seattle. Yes, there's pressure on Portland. But you know who there's pressure on? Nico, who's there's pressure
on? Brian Smetzer?
No, the Vancouver Whitecaps.
For Nico, Cascadia is only Seattle and Portland. That's the problem.
Well, that coach is on the hot seat there.
The little brother,
Manny Sartini and Axel Schuster are a little bit on the hot seat.
Yes.
They're good people from everything I've heard, but they've made the playoffs once since 2018. 18, 19, 20, out 21. They lost in the first round. Last year, they didn't make it. They're in the Champions League this year, which helps because they won the Voyageurs Cup. But there's some heat on that organization.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go third wheel on you guys and say Vancouver.
Jonathan, but you know what? It's a good point, but my view with Vancouver is that if they were serious aspirations in that organization, Manny Sartini shouldn't be there. For me, tactically and on game reading, that was it. It's enough. He was the guy who took the job and tried to do his best. But if we have expectations for this group and for this organization, we need to find someone else. And they didn't. And for me, that means trusting that means we are okay to whatever the outcome is.
Well, and I think that's part of the issue in Vancouver is that the ownership does not have a ton of ambition for what should be, I think, a leading city in this league.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's an incredible soccer city. It's a very international city. They ought to be able to attract talent there to get it to play.
Yeah. And if that coach has a slow start, I mean, I got to think you would think.
Well, but if he goes, I'm not sure there's a ready-made replacement out there.
It's probably not.
And no, I don't think they have it.
And I think I think often of Jim Curtin in his early years with Philadelphia, where I didn't know how good a coach he was because I knew his talent wasn't good enough. They don't have the talent out there except for Ryan Gaul.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. The thing with Vancouver is just they've created an expectation of just being the last in Cascadia or just not being exciting. And it goes back to coaching. And I mean, it doesn't go back to coaching. It goes back to the organization. I mean, I remember since Carl Robinson was in this team, I mean, it was just, kind of mediocre. They might make the playoffs. They might just bunker down for a couple of those playoff games and try to squeeze out a game. But in reality, it's just, man, they just have a hard time at really creating a legacy, a team, a franchise is going to be a winning, successful culture. So that's kind of what they fall flat in my opinion. This year, I like what they're bringing in Sergio Cordova. I think he's going to be a good guy up top. I think that the midfield is decent, but once again, I just don't see a lead roster that's going to compete in Cascadia or in the West.
Well, here's another way in which they've got it. They've got pressure on them and competition that not a lot of other teams in MLS have, because there's 2 Canadian Premier League teams in British Columbia now.
Mhm.
And if the Whitecaps aren't winning, people are going to take their money elsewhere.
Yeah, they'll go to the CPL. Yeah.
And so when the Whitecaps
Good
are
point.
winning, or when they're even close to winning, that place is packed. It's loud. That is a team with decades of history, as we all know. And as I said, a wonderful soccer city that was a World Cup host in 2015 and will be again in 2026. All the pieces are there. But if they don't bother, people are going to take their money elsewhere. And I've come around to the conclusion over the years that, you know what, if you're going to take your money elsewhere and not show up, I'm not going to complain, because that's your right as a paying customer.
Of
I
course.
like it.
especially on this. I mean, with the market and the growth of the game around the states and the good games that you actually can look at it. And that was Jonathan, you brought in a thought that I had when all these discussions of the European Super League came out, right? And people defending or attacking the Super League and talking about the rich against the poor and all this stuff. And then you go back to, listen, the only real game that is for the people is the local game, right?
Right.
Your US Open Cup, your USL teams, your MLS teams. Other than that, it's just and even starting with the MLS, just everything else is just business. It's the way it is. It's a private enterprise. So your game, no, Super League is not taking your game away. Your game is in the park. It's in the USL. It's in the US Open Cup. That's your game.
And if you're in Austin, where Austin FC is the only major professional sports team in town,
Yep.
that's
Mhm.
one thing. If you're in Seattle, where there are a lot of teams, but it's not a fully stocked, well, I guess it's not a fully stocked, professional sports market. And the Mariners are finally good now for the first time in what, I don't know, 15 years, whatever. Think about in Philadelphia, the Union have to scratch and claw for every ounce of attention, ticket sales revenue, everything else that they have in a very busy sports market. In New York, I said this to John. I've said it to his dear friend, who I think we all know, Roberto Abramowitz. Had this conversation with him many times. In New York, if you're not the Yankees, nobody cares.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Giants.
That's true.
If it's in the NFL season, it's the Giants. If the Knicks are good in the NBA season,
It's the Knicks, yeah.
it's the Knicks. But
they
other than
do
that,
have to be good.
everybody else, and that includes
true.
New York City FC, that includes the Red Bulls, that includes Gotham on the women's side. It's the Liberty and the WNBA. And I'll tell you this, I want to watch what happens this summer with the attendances at the MLS game, because the biggest show in town, it's the Yankees and the Mets. But after that, it's not New York City FC, it's the Liberty. And I don't think that the soccer teams think about it this way necessarily, that they are competing. The Rain, Nico, where you are, the Rain get it in Seattle, that they are competing with the Storm for attention and the dollar. They're competing with the Storm and the Sounders, frankly.
Yeah.
I don't think the New York MLS teams understand, and they're outposts of global organizations, so maybe they don't care as much as we'd like them to. But that they have to compete with they are competing for the dollar and the space in the newspaper and on television and everything else with Sabrina Ionescu and Brianna Stewart. And I'd take Sabrina Ionescu and Brianna Stewart in that battle right now.
Absolutely.
That's absolutely
I
true.
love it.
Boys, anything else? Because it's 1 hour already.
Yeah.
I think we should.
And Dylan,
probably-
I'm sorry, I do have to hop off. I've
Yeah.
got kiddo duty, so I gotta
Yeah.
go.
No,
I gotta
thank
go.
you, Arch, for being
Thank
with
you, Arch.
us.
Great to see you.
Thing. Yep. Good to see you.
Good to see you guys. Take
And
care.
you too. And you too, Nico and Jonathan. Anything
Hey, it's a
else?
pleasure,
Or we're
guys.
good to
No,
go?
it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
All right.
Yeah,
So
no, thank
Nico,
you for being with us. It was fantastic to hear your thoughts, Jonathan. It's the first time I got to really uh, talk to you in
yeah.
a segment where I could just hear everything. Love the points you brought up. Thank you so much. But I did want to ask John, since we didn't really talk about Portland Timbers. I mean, what is that expectation? Just to close off the segment, we know what to expect from Seattle. We know what it is that everyone expects, what they have in line with this roster. Portland is interesting. There's a lot of potential there with Santi Moreno, with Mosquera. They're
Yeah,
looking for a
Nico.
center back. I'm told right now that they're going to hopefully be signing within the next couple of months. But what is the real expectation of Portland with a Giovanni Savarese? That's one of the best coaches in the league, or one of my favorites in terms of strategy and motivating. I mean, he's just so good. But what's the expectation?
Simple. I'm gonna make it quick so we can leave. They had to make the playoffs. They had to be more stable, and they had to have a good run on the playoffs because otherwise, even though Gio have a long time contract, that could be on the table. He had the the core of that roster is there. They are having additions. They are about to have the center forward that they wanted. So the expectation is go back to the playoffs, be good in the playoffs, and then resolve the issues that they have in the front office. They're losing a lot of the faith. And even though you saw a lot of fans on the stands, the fight, the tensions between the fans and the front office is still there. And they had to work that out. I don't know if the fans are going to stop until they actually see Paulson out of the ownership group. I don't know if that's going to happen, but that is a battle that I think the supporters are willing to take on. But on the field, the expectation is go back to the playoffs and do a long run in the playoffs.
All right.
All right. And I think with that, Jonathan, thanks again for staying with us. Nico, this has been really good. And we all glad that we did this. Week one, we review it, we work through it, a lot of items to dissect. We keep on watching, we keep on seeing, we keep on analyzing MLS, and we see you guys in another edition of this MLS Back Action Panel with Nico Moreno, Pulso Sports Network, and the Soccer Bar. Thank you, guys.